Hey, what's up everybody? This is Osterberg501 and today I'm going to go over another one of the leaked legendary tier sets for Outriders, and this is the Lava set for the Pyromancer. Now before we get into the video, less than 5% of people that watch my videos are subscribed to my channel, so make sure to subscribe if you want to keep up with all of my uploads. And like with all of these leaked legendary items for Outriders, we're not going to be paying much attention to the specific numbers, and we're mainly going to be focused on the mods and the tier set bonus. And all of the class specific tier sets in Outriders focus on two different abilities, either through its tier set bonus or its mods. And the first ability that this tier set focuses on is Eruption. Create a volcanic eruption beneath the selected enemy, dealing damage to them and all allies within a small radius around the target. And then the second ability is F.A.S.E.R beam. Fire an energy beam that deals damage that benefits from 125% of status power, inflicting burn and causing interrupt. So this is essentially just a big channeled beam that gets higher scaling from your status power. So essentially it's like you have an additional 25% status power compared to what it would do to all their other abilities. And it also inflicts burn and interrupts, making this ability incredibly strong baseline. It's gonna hit really hard, inflicts burn on everything, and then also interrupts, which can be incredibly strong for elite enemies and bosses. And then the tier set bonus for this set is increases damage and decreases cooldown of Eruption, which is the first ability we just talked about. So this is hyper focused on Eruption, and it's pretty simple, but it can still be incredibly strong. We have no idea the actual damage increase or cooldown reduction that this is going to give. Now by looking at a lot of the other tier set bonuses, it's probably going to be a pretty big amount of damage increase and cooldown reduction. So first we have Helmet of the Lava Lich, and the tier 3 for this is Ashen Champion for F.A.S.E.R beam. Inflicts ash on enemies instead of burn. Each enemy hit boosts your anomaly power by 15% for 10 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. Now this is actually an incredibly strong tier 3 mod, because first off there are other abilities with the Pyromancer that synergizes with ash and have some effect on them that works off of ash, and then there are also other abilities on the Pyromancer that have mods that change them from being affected by burn and instead being affected or having synergies with ash. So even just the first part can be pretty good, but then the second part, giving you 15% increase on anomaly power and making that stack up to 5 times, is a massive amount of damage increase. And also take into consideration the F.A.S.E.R beam itself has higher scaling with anomaly power, so this is going to do even more for this ability. So just this tier 3 mod with F.A.S.E.R beam is going to be incredibly strong by itself. And the other mod is Magma Coat for Eruption, increases the lava's damage over time by 39,000. And this doesn't actually say this in the tooltip on the wiki, and I'm assuming that's because we actually don't have a lot of specifics for Eruption yet. It has been shown in some developer videos, but not the actual tooltip or what it does. But it does seem to be that Eruption has a damage over time built in that is something past just a burn. Next up, we have Upper Robe of the Lava Lich, and the tier 3 for this is Not Impressed, reduces the damage taken from elites by 20%. Now this is a really basic mod. We've actually gone over this before, and I'm not certain if this is supposed to be on this many of the legendary armor pieces, because I think I've seen this on 3 or 4 of the leaked legendary armor pieces. And I'm not sure if it's just there because it's kind of like a baseline mod that isn't class specific, or if there was an issue with how these were obtained that put them on more items than they're supposed to be on. So not certain. The mod is decent, but I think it's probably not going to be used that much compared to a lot of the class specific mods and how strong they are. And the other mod is Giga Blast for Eruption, increases Disco's radius by 100%. Now that's absolutely massive, because something I've definitely been noticing with Outriders in general is that the bigger radius you can get an ability to affect enemies on, the stronger the ability is going to be, because especially with just abilities in general in Outriders, they're really strong. So the more enemies you can hit makes it stronger and stronger. And especially for the Pyromancer, because so much of your kit, including your healing and a bunch of the synergize for your abilities, is built around applying burn to enemies. So being able to hit a ton of things with an ability that then applies burn, then synergizing off your healing and other abilities is going to be incredibly strong by itself. Next up, we have Charms of the Lava Lich, and this one does not have a tier 3 on it. It has 2 tier 1s, and like I said, I'm not certain if this is just something that's kind of rare on a few armor pieces in the game, or if this was an issue with how these items were obtained, or if there's a possibility that this was rolled off and it's just not showing that it was rolled in this actual menu in the game. So for stuff like this, take it with a grain of salt if it's going to be like this in the full version of the game. But the verse mod is Etna for Eruption. Skill can be activated one more time before triggering the cooldown. And I've said this about other mods that do the same thing for other abilities. I'm not a big fan of these mods in Outriders because it doesn't add another charge and turn the ability into a charge system. Because usually in a lot of RPGs, it would turn it into a charge system so you could use one of the cooldowns and then that cooldown you just used would start refreshing even without using the other cooldown. In Outriders, you use one and nothing will start refreshing until you use both. Then it just starts refreshing and will give you both back on the cooldown. I'm not as a big of a fan as that as a charge system. And the other mod is Pure Power for Phaser Beam. It increases the skill's damage by 59,000. So just a general damage increase that seems to be a decent damage increase. Next up, we have a lower Robe of the Lava Lich, and the tier 3 for this is Improved Damage for Eruption, increases explosive damage by 67,000. So again, another just basic mod that increases the damage of the ability, and it seemed to be a decent damage increase, but for a tier 3 mod, just having a damage increase seems a little bit lackluster. Usually this just straight damage increases I'd expect to be more of a tier 1 mod thing. Even though it could be incredibly strong, it's still just a base damage increase. Then we have Size Matters for Phaser Beam, increases the beam's radius by 100%, and this is going to be incredibly strong as well because the Phaser Beam, like we went over, also applies burn and interrupts enemies, which if you're facing a ton of elites, being able to interrupt them is very strong. Then applying a status effect on a lot more targets is really strong. And we also have another tier 3 mod on another one of these pieces we just went over, where now the Phaser Beam applies ash instead of burn, so everything gets stunned, and then you get a stacking anomaly power increase the more enemies you hit, which is now much easier because the Phaser Beam is so much bigger. And then finally, we have Boots of the Lava Lich, and the tier 3 for this is Even Odds. Increase your maximum health by 5% for each enemy within a 10-meter radius around you, stacks up to 5 times. Now this is a really strong mod if you're doing something like a close range build or a more tanky build where you're going to be in close range. In my opinion, it really doesn't fit in with the type of build that the rest of the mods in this tier set is going for, because it's going for a longer range beam attack and a longer range AoE eruption attack. So this seems more like a build that you would stay at longer ranges with and not want to be super close to enemies. So overall, a good mod that you'd probably be using on something else, but most likely not something you would use on this specific build. Then the other mod is Volcanic Armor for Phaser Beam, reduces the incoming anomaly power damage by 25% and weapon damage by 25% when the skill is active. So essentially, when you're using Phaser Beam, you're now a lot tankier to pretty much everything. And depending on how squishy this build would be or how squishy your specific stats would be, this could be really strong, because this is essentially just removing a chunk of the damage you would take while using this ability. So it could be a good addition to a build, especially if you're not very tanky overall. So that is the entirety of the Lava Lich tier set for the Pyromancer. Seems like a really interesting set, and some of that is also because we really haven't seen much of the Phaser Beam or the Eruption abilities. We have seen them in some of the developer videos, but we haven't learned really any specifics, any specific tooltips or anything like that. And this set overall seems really strong. So subscribe if you want to see more Outriders or other videos. Leave a like if you liked the video. Leave a comment down below what you guys think about this tier set, and thanks for watching.